Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. We'll begin Daf Ayin Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Amrula Amar Rabbi Elazar Shlomim Sheshachtan Me'erev Yantav. If a person shechted the Shlomim, he brought a korban Shlomim, and he shechted it Erev Yantav. Eina Yaitza Behem Lo Mishum Simcha V'Lo Mishum Chagiga. It cannot be Yaitza, that not his obligation of the Chagiga. He can't be yotze with that the chagiga of Tezvav, of bringing the korban chagiga for the regal, for the chag, and he can't be yotze with that with the simcha, the mitzvah of samachta b'chagecha, of eating the basar, the meat of the shlom. He can't be yotze with that either. Why not? Mishum simcha d'chsiv. The reason he can't be yotze with that meat for the mitzvah simcha, because the pasuk says v'zavachta v'samachta. It says v'zavachta v'samachta. So therefore, be'inan zvicha, we need the shchita b'shah simcha. The zvicha has to be at the time of the simcha. So if he shechted, he brought the korban on Erev Yantav, he brought it on Yudalit. That's not the time of simcha yet. That's not the chag yet. It's only Erev chag. Therefore, the zvicha was not done at the time of the simcha, so you can't be yaitza with that for the basar for the simcha, for shalmei simcha. So therefore, you need zvicha b'shal simcha v'leka mishum chagiga. You can't be yaitza with the shlomim for the chi of the chagiga of tezvav. The reason is because havedava shebechayv, because the chayva, the chagiga rather, is a chayva. It's an obligation. We're mechuyev to bring this korban. It's a chiyuv to bring the korban chagiga for the chag. And v'chol davar shebechayva ein abal min achulin. And anything that is a chayva, that it's an obligation to be yotze, that chiyuv, the korban has to come from chulin. So you can't be yotze your korban chagiga, the chiyuv of chagiga, with the shlomim, that it's kodesh, it's shlomim. You can't be yotze. You have to take something which is chulin and use it for the purpose, for the specific purpose of this chayva. So you have to take an animal which is chulin and designate it for the korban chagiga. You can't use a shlomim that you shechted on Erev Yantiv. You cannot use that to fulfill your chayva of the korban chagiga of Tezvav. As far as the shalmei simcha is concerned, this would not be a problem, because as opposed to other korbanos, even though there's a chiyuv of samachta b'chagecha, but you could be yotze your chiyuv of simcha, of eating basar kodesh, even from something which was not designated for the purpose of shalmei simcha. Because as the Chazon Ish explains, that the simcha is the eating of a basar kodesh on the chag. It's not the hakrovim. Now the chiddush over here is, we're being mechadish over here according to what Rabbi Elazar is saying, that Rabbi Elazar is saying is that even though that is so, however, the shchita at least has to take place at the time of simcha. But the shalmei simcha, you can, as long as you're eating basar kodesh on the chag, that was shechted at the time of the chag, it does not have to be for specifically for the brought for the purpose of shalmei simcha. It's any basar kodesh that you're eating it in a manner where it gives simcha. You can be yotze the mitzvah of simcha. So that wouldn't be the problem. The problem over here is that it was shechted erev yantiv. But if it does not on itself, it does not have to come from the chulin. The chagiga is the davar shebechayv, it has to come from a chulin. So in this case over here, v'shechted shlomim on Erev Yantav, you cannot be yotze with that basar, not the mitzvah of simcha, not for shalmei simcha, and not for chagiga either. Lema Messiah, let's bring a riot to Rabbi Elazar's din. The Torah says, "Ha'isa ach sameach." On Sukkot, we should be b'simcha, nothing but joyous. That's to be marba the night, the last night, the night of Shmini Atzeres, for simcha, for the chiyuv to have simcha on the chag. It's to be marba the night of Shmini Atzeres as well. As Rashi explains, the Torah, this seems to be an extra passage, because the Torah says previously, Chag HaSukkah stasa l'chol shivas yomim b'as megarach mikveh v'samachta b'chagecha. It says already samachta b'chagecha. So why is it repeated over here? Shivas yom tochel Hashem l'kecha v'chule, And it says, Vayisach Sameach. So that seems to be an extra pasuk. So the ribui is to be marbe the last night of Shmini Atzeres. So the way Taisus explains it is that we need a ribui not only for the last night, we're marbe all the nights. We need to be marbe all the nights for Simcha, because it says, so you would think that the mitzvah of Simcha is only in the day. So this is the Bimar nights. But there's a special ribui for the last night, because Shmini Atzeres is a chag, is a regel b'fnei atzmai. So there is a separate emphasis on the last night. But really we're marba all the nights. So this is the Bimarba all the nights for Simcha. That Simcha applies all the nights, and so therefore applies the entire time of Sukkot, including the nights and including the last night, the night of Shmini Atzeres. Now Rashi's sheet over here is that it's only marba the night of Shmini Atzeres and not the day of Shmini Atzeres. Taisus asks on this, and we'll see some of the kashas as we go further in the Gemara. He asks on this, and he says, no, it's to be marba not only the night of Shmini Atzeres, it's marba the day of Shmini Atzeres as well. And it's include the daytime also. Rashi in Sukkah on Daf Mem Beis actually says, like Taisus over here, that it's marba not only the night and the day. It seems to be a stira in Rashi, Ayin Litzlach, who tries to answer the stira. Al Kol Panim, we're marba over here. Zel Rabbas Leila Yontav Achron Simcha. Do you say Leila Yontav Achron or Leila Yontav Harishain? Well, maybe I should be marba the first night. Why do I say that I'm marba the last night? Maybe I should be marba the first night. So Talmud Loimer Ach Cholak. I say no. The Ach is Cholak. It tells us a Ach Sameach, but it's a miyut, meaning we're mayit. It's not to be marba the first one. It's a miyut, and we therefore exclude the first night from Simcha. My time. Why do I say it that way? Why do I say that I exclude the first night and I include the last night? Why do I say that's the opposite? Well, I have a ribui, so maybe I should say that be marbe the first night and exclude the last night. Lav mishum de'en lebamet yismach. Is it so? Isn't this a riot or a Elazar's din? Because he can't be mesameach on the first night, because you're only mesameach. You're mesameach with shalmei, with shlomim, or the basar karbonos. Now, where are you going to get the basar karbonos from for the first night? Only if you shechted erev yontiv. But according to Rabbi Elazar's din, you can't be Yotze Simcha with that, because the Zvicha was not at the time of the Simcha. So therefore, why do we say we exclude the first night? Isn't that a riot of Rabbi Elazar's din? That Ein Lo B'mai Samach, he has nothing to be Mesameach with, because a korban that he brought, that he shechted erev yontiv, he can't be Yotze Simcha with that. And that's why there's no mitzvah of Simcha the first night, because he doesn't have korbanos, the meat of korbanos, to be Mesameach with. So the we have a riot of Rabbi Elazar, and we say, no, that's not the reason. You don't have a riot. Because Kedektani Taima, it's because of what we learned. The reason is in the Baraisa, Ma Rois Le Rabbis Lele Yontavach, Ulahetzi Lele Yontav. Why should I say that the first night is excluded? The last night is included because Marbani Lele Yontavach Achran, Sheyesh Simcha Lefonav. I marbe the Lele Yontavach Achran, that's the lesser Chiddush. And marba only entitled to be marba the lesser chiddush, not the greater chiddush. Now, Leila Yondavach, when there's already a chiyuv of simcha, to say that the chiyuv continues into the last night, that's a lesser chiddush. But to say that it starts earlier, where there already is no pre-existing chiyuv, that's a bigger chiddush. I won't be able to be marba then. So marba ni leila yontav achron sheyesh simcha lefanav umoitzi ni leila yontav rishon she'ein simcha lefanav, and that's the reason. And therefore, you have no raya to Rabbi Elazar's din. Masi Rabbi Yosef, he asks a kasha on this din. Chagigas Arba Osar, the Chagiga of the 14th, Yaitzebon Mishum Simcha. So we learned that you can Yaitzeba, you can be Yaitze Yechiv with Simcha with that, Vein Yaitzeba Mishum Chagiga. But you cannot be Yaitse that Mishum Chagiga. So we're assuming right now that means is that there was the Chagiga for Yudal, which he shechted on Erev Pesach on Yudal. You can't be Yaitse your Chagiga of Tezvav because you have to be Yaitse with the Dov Shebachul. But you could be Yaitse with Simcha. Amai, hi, according to Rabbi Lazar, why is that so? Well, if you shechted it on your Dalit, it's not Zvicha B'Shas Simcha. How can you be Yaitze? Ravidi Barav, and he says, no, it's not a kasha. We don't mean over here, we're not referring to a case where he shechted it on the 14th. It was designated as Chagigas Yudalit. But in fact, he shechted it on Tezvav. So it was shechted at the time of Simcha. The Zvicha was at the time of Simcha. It's just teaching us over here that even though it was not designated for Chagigas Yudal Tezvav, even though it was designated not for specifically for a Shalmei Simcha, therefore, nevertheless, you're eating Basar Kodesh, you could be Yaitse the mitzvah simcha with it, even though it was shechted yesterday. You can't be Yaitse Chagiga because it's a davar shebachayven, has to come from a chulin. But you could be Yaitse for the Shalmei Simcha, even though the designation was for a Chagigas Yudalid, you could be Yaitse, but provided it was shechted on Tezvav. So, therefore, over here, that we're talking where it's not a kasha because we could be talking where it was shechted on Tezvav. So Amar Ravidi Baram Sheikvu Shachta Amar Vashachanam Mistabit. It's mistabit to say that. Because if you're not going to say that, how must need Saman Katana? Well, who's the Tana that of this brisa? Who is it? It's Ben Tema. Because it's Ben Tema. And he's the one who said over here, he was the Tana of this brisa. And Ben Tema, Apostle Belina. Now, according to Ben Tema, you can't say that it was shechted on Yudalit. And you can't say, therefore, you can be Yaitse with Shalmei Simcha, even though it was shechted on Yudalit, because you can't say it was shechted on Yudalit, because according to Ben Tema, he holds the Chagigas Yudalit has the same din as the Korban Pesach. It's only Nechali Yom V'Layla. So by the next day, it would already be Posel Belina. So since this is going according to Ben Tema, therefore, it has to be talking where the shchita was not done on Yudalit, it was done on Tezvav. Because according to Ben Tema possible Belina, Shmami no. Therefore, you see that we're talking where it was shechted on the 15th and not on the 14th. Mosiv Rava has a kasha. It says, we learned in Sechasukya, the Mishnah says, Halal v'Simcha Shmoina, that Halal and Simcha is for 8 days. Now, if you're going to tell me that you need the shlit at the time of Simcha, sometimes it'll turn out that it's only for 7 days. If the first day falls out on Shabbos, then you're not going to have 8 days, you're only going to have 7 days of Simcha. Because, according to Rabbi Lazar, if the first day is on Shabbos, well, you can't shech the Shalmei Simcha on Shabbos. It doesn't have to come on that day, so it's not considered to be a Korban Tzibur Shekavul Hizman. Therefore, the shchita of the Shalmei Simcha is not Deicha Shabbos. Now, if you can't be Yaitze with the Basra that was shechted Erev Shabbos on Erev Yont, then how are you going to have Simcha for 8 days? If the first day falls out on Shabbos, well, you can't shech the Shalmei Simcha on Shabbos. And if you can't be Yaitze with the shchita from yesterday, then you don't have 8 days. Now, Bishlam, if the first day is not Shabbos, it's not a problem because you have meat. The Shlomim is Nechal Shnei Yom V'Lai Lecha. So if any day of the Chag is Shabbos, you can be Yaitze from what was shechted the day before, which was on Sukkot, and that you could shecht it. If it's not Shabbos, you could shecht the Shlomim, and you can be Yaitze with that meat for the next day. But if the first day is Shabbos, you can't shecht it on Shabbos, and the day before, you can't be Yaitze with what shechted the day before because it's not at the time of the Chag, of the Simcha, then how are you going to have it for 8 days? Now this is from here. This is one of the Ketaya Kashas, Taisus Aslan Shat Rashi Shita. You see over here it says the Halal Simcha Shmoina. Now Halal is 8 days, and it's during the daytime. That would mean that the Simcha, we're referring to the Simcha, as when it says Shemaina, also refers to not only the night of Shemini Atzeres, the day of Shemini Atzeres as well. So this is one of the rayas that Taisus brings, that when we say L'Rabbas L'Leil Yontav Ha'achrain, we mean not only the nighttime, we mean the day as well. Taisus has other kashas on Rashi from the Lulav, that it's in the, that it's also in the daytime. But Al Kopanim, the Gemara is asking, Rav is asking a kasha over here, if Rabbi Lazar's din is true, how are you going to have Simcha for 8 days? Now the kasha is stronger, it's a starker kasha, because over there, the Gemara, over there, the Mishnah and Sukkah, it is machalik, rather, between other things that are not the full 8 days, when you have things that are not Deicha Shabbos, and are not the full 8 days, and therefore, it mentions Lulav and Arava, and therefore it should have been Mechalek in the case of Simcha. But the fact that it's not Mechalek with Simcha, that shows you that it's Davke 8 days, even if the first day is Shabbos. That's the way Chacham Tzvi learns it, that it's a starker kasha. That it can't be that we're talking only in general terms, because it does make exceptions for other cases where we don't have the full 8 days. So, now, there's an alternative, because you bring the serum of Regolim, you bring the Sar Lachatos, that it comes, the goats, that you bring that for the Regel. So you bring these, and these are brought, these are a Korban Sibushak of Willem Zman, they're Deicha Shabbos, so they are brought on Shabbos, and therefore you can be Yotzei your Simcha with those. Omer Rava asked, state Shuvas Hodover, you have 2 kashas, Chana, the Sir Regalim, Chaynechol. Well, even though you're makr of the Korban on Shabbos, but that's for the hakrov of the Korban, that's for the shlit of the Korban, but it's not for the roasting of it. The roasting has to be done after Shabbos. So therefore, if they're eaten, they can only be eaten raw. If they're eaten on Shabbos, it's only raw. And sli nachol, not roasted. And there's no simcha with raw meat. Void, secondly, kahanim meichle. The sira chatas, those are eaten by the sichri kahuna, by the kohanim. Yisrael b'masmechim. So how is Yisrael going to have simcha in what the kohanim eat, the karbonos that the kohanim eat? So you can't be yaitza simcha with that. Elam ha'rafapa mesamcha b'ksus nakiya v'yayin yashin. And chanami. How are you mesameach? If it first falls out on Shabbos, the first day falls out on Shabbos, that day you're not mesameach with the basar of the korbanos. On that day, you're mesamcha with ksus nakiya, with clean clothing, and with yain yoshin, and with good wine. That's how you're yaitza with it. You're not yaitza with the basar. So it says 8 days. It's referring that there's always 8 days, even if the first day is on Shabbos, you can be mesameach with the ksus nakiya and yain yoshin. Taisus learns that these, the yayin, the ksus nakiya, but that's only midarabona. And chanami, midaraisa, you will not be yaitza the simcha on the first day. Others learn that no, there's a kiyum of this in the deraisa as well. In these means, if there's no basar, you can be yaitza with these midaraisa as well. Taisa says it's only midarabona. There's a diyun in the paiskim when we say that the first night, we're not marbas simcha the first night. That's only as far as the Basar Shlomim. Is it as far as these as well? So that's a din on the Paiskim. Perhaps the first night there is no simcha, even with Ksus Nakiya and Yain Yoshin, or perhaps no. The miut of when we say that we're excluding the ach is to be excluding the first night. That's only from the Basar, but not from these, from the Ksus and the Yain. Kiyasa Ravi, and when Ravi came to Omar Rabbi Elazar, he said, in the name of Elazar, Shalom Mishashach Tamir Yontev, Yaitza B'Mishum Simcha. He said, no, it's a different version. A different version, he says, where you could be Yaitza with Simcha, but Ve'en Yaitza B'Mishum Chagiga. Yaitza Mishum Simcha, because according to this version, Loi Bin Zich B'Shah Simcha, you don't need the shlit at the time of Simcha. Mishum Chagiga, but not Chagiga, because of a Davish B'Chayva, because the Chagiga is a Davish B'Chayva, V'chol Davish B'Chayva, in Avah, Elam Min HaChulin. And it has to come from Chulin, and it can't come from Shlomim. Meisvei, I'll ask you a kasha, vayisa ach sameach, l'rabbis leile yon tavach on the simcha, were marbed the last night, Shmini Atzeres for simcha. Ata, Aimer l'rabbis leile yon tavach, oy eina ela l'rabbis leile yon tav rishon, or maybe the ribu is for the first night. Talmud loimer ach cholak. There's a meal. So we're memayat the first night, we're including the last, but we're mayat the last. My time, why do we say it this way? Why do we include the last night? Why not the first night? La mishum dein lo b'may yismach. Must be because you can't. There's practically, you can't be yaitza the first night because you have no basar to be yaitza with. Because the basar of the shlomim that you shechted yesterday, you can't be yaitza simcha with it because you need the zicha b'shal simcha. And according to this version, it's a kasha and Rabbi Lazar. Where's his loy? That's not the reason. The reason is kedusaya. Ma'ari yisol the rabbis leili yontava achra. Why do I say it in that way? I marbed the last night because it's a lesser chiddush, because it's already the time of the chiyuv. It's just extending the pre-existing chiyuv. But I exclude the first night where there's no simcha lefonav, so it's a bigger chiddush, and that's why I exclude the first night. So therefore, it's not a kasha on Rabbi Elazar.